Hello and welcome to The Lucky Roll, an eclectic channel for eclectic games. And today I'm doing an owner's review of Twilight Imperium 4th edition and its expansion, Prophecy of Kings. Not a standard review, but an owner's review. Now what's the difference, I hear you say? Well, this review is not a review based upon the gameplay or whether Twilight Imperium 4th edition is worth your time playing, because the obvious answer is yes. It's an excellent game, and one that all serious board gamers should try at least once. This review is one based upon whether it's worth your time owning it, and if you do own it, what is the best way to maximize the value of your copy. Firstly, for the few people who aren't aware of what Twilight Imperium 4th edition is, it's an epic strategy game where players compete to garner the most victory points. At the centre of the galaxy is Mechatol Rex, a planet whose ownership gives players a better chance to score victory points. And the first player to reach 10 points, or indeed the game limit of 14 victory points, is the winner. It was a game that first came out in 1997 and was re-released with 2nd, 3rd and current 4th edition in 2000, 2004 and 2017 respectively. Every edition brought both improvements and expansions which were folded into subsequent editions respectively. The latest is the 4th and is, in my opinion, the most streamlined edition. However, it is still nonetheless both a time and table hog, where both your sitting room and indeed your entire day is taken up with this game. This game is infamous for taking hours upon hours upon hours to complete, and the reputation is well earned. The shortest game I ever played was a 4-player game which took 5 hours, and the longest was an 8-player game which took 15.5 hours to complete, not including the hour break for food. I bought this game on my honeymoon in 2019 with the intention of planning games on bank holiday Mondays. There are 10 public bank holidays in the Republic of Ireland, and in the 4 years that I have had the game, I am pretty certain that I have played it a total of 12 times. Out of 40 opportunities, over 4 years, I have played it 12 times. Now that is not to say that the time wasn't well spent, or that I don't feel like I have gotten my value for money, because I genuinely have. However, this is a game that is notoriously difficult to organise, as it requires a genuine commitment from all players, both in terms of rules learning, time given and space allocated for the game, especially if you decide to do an epic game over 2 days. That is a big ask for people who are coming over to play this game, especially for the first time. As a result, it's best that you do the bulk of organisation both ahead of time and have the table set up and ready for players when they arrive. As an owner of this game, the frequent pitfalls I've experienced with it are usually with players rather than the game itself. The most common are people dropping out at the last second for genuine reasons: family commitments, traffic, a first-time date with another person, other sudden opportunities to spend their bank holiday, etc. This, whilst initially frustrating, can be a blessing in disguise, as it will expedite the game with the remaining players. Another problem you will run into as an owner of this game is people being told of the commitment needed for the game, but not actually realising it. This will manifest in different ways, such as people not arriving on time, people thinking that a day's commitment means a few hours and not a game that stretches into the wee hours of the morning, or people who have children having to go home for genuine reasons, such as their child getting upset or sick or other family reasons or emergencies. The worst is the player who has done no preparation and turns up to the table with no idea of either the rules or the factions on offer. In most cases with board games, it's a minor annoyance, as 20 minutes can be sufficient to explain the rules in most games, but with Twilight Imperium, it is usually the bones of an hour, and the player who is freshly arrived is usually overwhelmed with rules or variables that it doesn't really sink in, and they struggle to keep up for the majority of the game. For that reason, I suggest as an owner that you do not hastily replace a player who has dropped out with another at short notice with no preparation, as it's not fair on them or on other players. If it's a person who simply didn't do the research, then it's important for you to keep your patience and remember that they are the one giving you their day off and choosing to spend it with you. The upside is also that it can serve as a rules refresh for players who did do preparation and an opportunity for people to clarify rules they were not certain about. At the end of the day, it's still just a board game and not worth falling out with your friends over. That would be the pitfall for your initial attempts to set up the game. Playing this game subsequently with people who enjoy it or who are familiar with the rules bring additional factors that you need to become aware of. One of the regular playtesters at the Lucky Roll has played this game several times and confessed to me that they have only enjoyed it twice. This person is a very genuine and selfless one, hence why they were happy to endure several games of this game without really enjoying it. But nevertheless, I was surprised when they told me of their reluctance to play a game I had thought genuinely that they had really enjoyed. What had curtailed their enjoyment was being seated next to an established strategy player or territorially aggressive ones. Of the playgroups I had who enjoyed this game, several were long-standing players of the computer game Stellaris, which is another grandiose strategy game, and as a result had no compunctions of it being aggressive or impinging on their neighbours' territories quickly. As a result, the playtesters' games were much more difficult, and they had little to no chance to get either their economies or their armies going. They spent much of their many games being limited or curtailed within a small territory, and the experience was not a pleasant one. Upon learning this, I ensured that they were seated next to me and another player I knew who would not be initially territorially aggressive, and as a result their enjoyment of the game went up immensely. On the last occasion, they even held the centre of Mechatol Rex, the universe, the centre of the universe, with an absurdly large army daring us all to come take it. So my advice on this matter is to know your player group and know their style of play, and ensure that people are seated in such a way that they can gain maximum enjoyment from the game. It may not be the most sportsmanship-like, but the aim of a board game at the end of the day is to have fun, and your duty as a host is to ensure that your guests have exactly that. Another aspect is players who consistently play to their strengths. My friend Jack is one of the aforementioned Stellaris players and consistently picks the Universities of Jandar as a faction. He won most of the games he played with that faction, as it's very similar to his preferred playstyle in Stellaris. Indeed, the last time he played that faction, he trounced us. And jokingly, we mentioned it to him that he was not allowed to play that faction anymore. And to his credit, he agreed. And the game has become much more refreshing, both for him and us as a result. Now, this is something that I am guilty of myself, as I often pick the Emirates of Hakan, as I love the wheeling and dealing that comes with them, and I use it to ensure that I am not an early target of aggression, but I have forced myself into a comfort rut, and it's something I need to get out of in order to get full value from my game. Variety is the spice of life, and there are a ton of factions in this game. Make sure you play and enjoy them all, rather than just stick to knowns or favourites. And this brings me to my next point. Pre-selection of factions. I've had games where they were handed out randomly, and games where people picked and researched the strengths, weaknesses of the factions a week before the scheduled game. The random aspect was fun, but if you get a difficult faction or one whose strengths do not suit your playstyle, it can lead to a difficult game, and given that this is a game that lasts several hours, it can ruin your enjoyment of the game. If this is an approach that you want to take, I would strongly suggest you do it with a lower player count and with a 10-point victory game condition. Pre-selection of factions for a serious game, however, especially with veteran players, ups the ante considerably and leads to an incredibly interesting game. The most recent game I played was at a friend's house who, God bless him, had everything pre-prepared. He had established a WhatsApp group, ensured that all players were seated according to the rules, a firm 11 o'clock start, and had opted for the epic experience of full expansion with 8 players and the full 14-point victory point condition. It was an incredible experience, but it did have its downsides. We started at 11 o'clock that morning and finished at 04:30 a.m. Two of the players had to be at work 3.5 hours later for 8 a.m. As it was literally 14.5 hours of intense concentration and was an incredibly competitive game, I was doubly fatigued. Fatigued from the loss of a night's sleep, but also fatigued from the brain cells I had burned from scheming and plotting for 14 plus hours. It took me more than a week to recover fully from the experience. I, however, was lucky as I booked the following day off work. My two fellow players who had to work in 3.5 hours, I felt nothing but sympathy for. But I will stress this, as far as they were concerned, the game experience was worth it. And that, genuinely, is how good this game is. The full whack Twilight Imperium 4th edition 8-player with expansion experience is an experience I think is worth having as an owner of the game once. And I think once only. Maybe if you're a young person with low commitments, it's a game state you can commit to more than once. But for the majority of people present, it just takes too much out of you. Especially for a middle-aged old fart like me whose days of all-nighters are long behind them. You'll either need to ensure that people have a second free day, which again increases logistical difficulties for all involved, or limit it to a 10-point victory point game. The other factor in this epic 8-game full-fat expansion is table and room space. My friend Pavel was the host of this epic game, and in order to accomplish it, he needed to commandeer his sitting room and source 3 long rectangular tables into a large T-shape to seat all players. We also had to have 16 chairs, 1 chair per player and 1 chair to house spare playing pieces, dice, drinks, phones, snacks and any other items that had no chance of fitting on the main table. Pavel has a large sitting room, but even then we took up a lot of space, and a lot of backs were sore the next day from sitting down. The clean-up the next day also took the bones of an hour, with 4 of us helping. The final thing I will say is the difference between vanilla and expansion. Both are excellent. However, I would advise you play several games of vanilla first to ensure that you will indeed get your use for your game, as not all players in your play group will be able to commit to this as much as you may like. If you are, however, one of the lucky people who does have a group that will play this semi-regularly with you and does, let me stress this, does play with you, then the expansion is a must-buy, as it makes an already fantastic game even greater, with new faction powers, faction agents and more versatility, as well as improvements over initial typos and word phrasing from the original game. It is not, however, an expansion that is easily separated from the vanilla, so I would advise you again to play vanilla a good few times first before you begin the chore of amalgamating both into the one game. Going forward, as a man who has played both maximum and minimum player counts of this game, I genuinely think that the route forward for me is the happy medium. 6-player games with 10 victory point tracks with the expansion included, with factions pre-selected, and perhaps a 14 victory point track for lower player counts, or a 10 victory point track if the factions are assigned randomly. This may sound like a list of grievances of the game, and perhaps a warning to players to not buy or purchase this game, but that genuinely is not my intention. I love this game, and this review is really a love letter to both the game and to its designers. But real love is tough love, and what I want is that for anyone who is watching this video with an eye for owning this game, to be wary of the pitfalls that lie in wait for your efforts in getting this expensive game to the table. If you are forewarned for the logistical problems in owning this game, you can prepare yourself better for them, and as a result, both your time and that of your friends becomes much more enjoyable as a result. It is a bit of an effort, but like all good things in life, well worth it. As always, this is Sean from The Lucky of Old. If you enjoy these videos, please like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And until next time, good luck, God bless, and stay safe.